In 1979, I was a freshman in high school in Chicago, and I had an algebra class. And every Friday, the algebra teacher would skip the lesson and have us listen to recordings of the great Zig Ziglar, one of the greatest motivational speakers, of course, who ever lived. Little did I know, I would end up getting to know Zig a little bit and having a 5-year beef, I guess, disagreement, whatever you want to call it, with Zig. Here's what happened. When I got into business with Bill Gove, the father of professional speaking, I was 32 and Bill was 85 years old. He had taught everyone, including Zig Ziglar. So when Bill and I got into business together, I wanted to put a board of advisors together, the best of the best. I mean, he was the father of professional speaking. Who would possibly, in their right mind, say no to the great Bill Gove, the person that taught all these people how to be keynote speakers, because he was one of the first top keynote speakers in the industry. So Bill put a list together. Bill Gove put a list together of the 20 people he wanted on our board of advisors, and it was a who's who. It had Mark Victor Hansen, it had the great Larry Wilson, Ty Boyd, Bill Brooks, Randy Gage, Mark Victor Hansen, Tony Alessandro, Jim Cathcart. It goes Jim Tunney. It goes on and on. These just were greats in our industry. And one of the names on the list was, of course, Zig Ziglar. And so I called 19 people, and they all said yes. And the last one I called was Zig. And Zig got on the phone, and we talked, and I told him what I was trying to do, and he said no. And I was shocked. I said, why would you say no? It's really just putting your name on the board. We're not going to ask a lot of you. We just really want it for credibility, and once in a while we may throw a question to you. And Zig said, well, I can't do it, Steve, because we have a similar speaking program, and it would compete with the Bill Gove speech workshop. And this just hit me the wrong way. Bill Gove, and I'm not saying I was completely right about this and Zig was completely wrong. I was 32 years old. I was very ambitious, and I just couldn't believe someone would turn down someone that mentored them to success. I mean, when Bill met Zig, he was selling pots and pans. And Zig told me personally many times that Bill was a great mentor to him over the years, and he really respected Bill so much. And I was just shocked that he wouldn't help us this way. And Zig said, well, it's nothing personal, it's just that it competes, your program competes with our program. And I said, we're just a small, tiny, it's just me and Bill, basically. You know, you're Zig Ziglar, you've got this giant multinational corporation. I said, I don't think we're going to be much competition. No disrespect intended. And he disagreed, and we went back and forth a little bit, and maybe I was inappropriate, maybe I shouldn't have pushed it that far, but I just couldn't believe someone would say no to Bill Gove. He was the most giving, generous man I've ever met to this day in the speaking industry. And I know that he gave Zig a lot too, and I just really couldn't believe it. And I went back to Bill, and I had to tell Bill that Zig said no. And Bill said, well, that's okay, because that's what Bill Gove did. He was like that. And I just had trouble getting over it. Anyway, so I did get over it, and we didn't put Zig on the board. I put someone else on there, or Bill and I put someone else on there. And a few years later, about 4 years later, we started a Bill Gove Toastmasters Club. Something that was approved by Toastmasters International, that had never been done. A club had never been named after a person before. It was against the bylaws, and Terry McCann, the president at the time, passed it because Bill Gove was one of the Golden Gavel winners, as was Zig Ziglar for Toastmasters International, and Bill is a legend at Toastmasters. And they put it through, and we were very excited about this club, and I wanted a who's who roster on the Bill Gove Golden Gavel Toastmasters Club in Boynton Beach, Florida, and I got it. I had Larry Wilson, I had Jim Tunney, I had all these big speakers who joined the club for $50, I think it cost, and they were all over the country. Not that they were going to come to Boynton Beach, Florida to attend the meetings, but I wanted those names on the roster because I thought it paid credence, it gave respect to the father of professional speaking. If he was going to have a little Toastmasters club in a little town in Florida, I thought it would be nice to have all those people. Well, everyone said yes that I asked. We had 40 of the biggest names in the business. Nito Quabain was another one, the great Nito Quabain. All these top speakers, they all said yes, and I called Zig, and Zig said no. And I said, you don't have to show up for meetings, Zig. You're Zig Ziglar. I understand you're not going to show up for a Toastmasters meeting. Either is Larry Wilson, okay, the biggest corporate speaker that ever lived. Either is Bill Brooks. Either is Jim Cathcart. Either is Tony Alessandra and Dr. Nito Quabain. They're not going to show up. I just want your name out there. It's really just a tribute, if you will, to Bill. And Zig said no. And we went back and forth a little bit, and maybe I was out of line. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I mean, Zig, after we had the first argument, he sent me a letter after I sent him a video that we did, and I framed the letter. It's July 18th, 1997. Zig sent me a letter. Very nice. He was very nice to do this. I sent him a video, Bill and I did, and Zig was very nice to send me a letter back, and I framed the letter, and I have it hanging in my home today in Atlanta, and I really did appreciate that. So he was a very nice man. There's no question about that. But we just really strongly disagreed on this, and I just was shocked that he wouldn't put his name on the Bill Gove Golden Gavel Toastmasters Club, and I never actually told Bill about it. I never told even my co-founder about it because I was a little embarrassed that Zig wouldn't do it, and I didn't want to hurt Bill's feelings, so I didn't. And I never said anything to Zig again after the phone call when he said no. We did exchange a little heated exchange because I just was a little upset that he wouldn't do it because it didn't cost him anything. It didn't mean anything. It just meant something to Bill. It would have meant something to Bill Gove. Bill was 89 years old at that time, and I just thought he should have done it. But he didn't, and so we had a little tension between us, and we saw him, Bill and I would see Zig once in a while at a national speakers meeting or some convention we were working. We might have seen him 4 or 5 times over the next year or so, and then Bill passed away in 2001, and I hadn't spoken to Zig after Bill passed away, but we had a big tribute to Bill Gove in Orlando at the National Speaker Association meeting, and I had speakers on the roster. I had Dave Yoho Sr., the great Dave Yoho Sr., one of the greatest of all time. Don Hudson was another board member of ours, another member of the Toastmasters, Bill Gove Toastmasters Club, the honorary member, of course. He was speaking, and of course the great Larry Wilson. And I had Jim Tunney speaking with us as well, and myself. And those were the speakers at the Bill Gove tribute. There were 300 of the biggest speakers in the world at that tribute. The joke of that night was, if you dropped a bomb on that meeting hall in Orlando when we were doing the tribute to Bill Gove, there would be no professional speaking business because everyone was there. Zig was not there, but Zig was at the national meeting. For some reason, he was at the national meeting, and I'd seen him in the hallway. I hadn't talked to him, but I got a call from Jim Tunney, the Dean of American NFL referees, if you're not familiar, one of the greatest referees in NFL, National Football League history, and a great speaker and a Bill Gove mentee. And Jim said he just couldn't make the flight from Northern California, and it was he wanted to, but he couldn't, and it was kind of last minute. He tried to, and I needed another speaker. And so, to Zig's credit, I will say, to Zig's credit, I found Zig. I tracked Zig down about an hour before the tribute. And I got it. I saw him in the hallway, and I explained what happened with Jim Tunney. I said, I know we've had our differences, and I'm sorry. I never meant to be disrespectful. I still don't understand why you made those decisions. But it's water under the bridge. But I'd really love it if you'd speak to fill in for Jim Tunney and speak at Bill's tribute. We're filming the tribute. It's going to go all over the world. Obviously, it's for posterity for the speaking business worldwide, and it'd be great if you could take his place and speak. And I honestly thought he was going to say no because I know he didn't like me very much because of our argument, because that's really the only way we knew each other. And to Zig's credit, he said yes. And he spoke, and of course he was tremendous because he's Zig Ziglar. He's one of the greatest speakers that ever lived. And we have it on tape, of course, and he did a beautiful job, and he never said anything about our disagreement or our beef or whatever you want to call it. And that was the end of it. And I don't believe I ever saw Zig again. I might have seen him 1 or 2 times, but I don't really even recall. Of course, we lost him in 2012, one of the greatest speakers of all time. But that's just sort of a backstory of my Zig Ziglar backstory. And of course, he was one of the greatest of all time. I still really don't understand why he said no to me. But I always have respected him. One of the greats that ever lived. And so that's my Zig Ziglar story.